go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day.
Hi, this is Joe Styler at domainacademy.com, and welcome back to our podcast. Today, we have a special guest with us, and before we turn it over to him for some questions, I'm going to let my co-host James introduce himself and our guest.
Thanks, Joe. My name's James, the Domain Investment Community Manager for GoDaddy, and in the final episode of the series, we're talking with the boss. Paul Nix is the Vice President for Domain Investors at GoDaddy, leading the important Domain Investor division. He oversees a plethora of products that domain investors use daily, including Afternic, GoDaddy Auctions, and Domain Academy. And he has been an important figure in the domain investment space for a long time. So hello, Paul, and welcome to the podcast.
Howdy, glad to be here.
Awesome. Could you start off by telling us a little bit about how you got started in the domain space, your journey at GoDaddy, and your role as VP for domain investors?
Sure. Yeah, I started off as an engineer. Software engineering was kind of my lot in life prior to GoDaddy. Came in shortly after, it was 2007, would have been after, I think, the second or so Super Bowl ad. Those big ads that got GoDaddy a lot of attention, a lot of growth, and a dire need to hire new engineers to keep up with the growth. So I came in on that. And my first job at GoDaddy was actually as the dev lead for our cash parking program. So cash parking was one of the two sort of investor-focused products that we had. We had that, and we had what was also a fairly fledgling TD-NAM, which is a name we don't use anymore, but tdnam.com, which stood for the domain aftermarket, that did auctions. So I came in, there was a manager over TD-NAM, a manager over myself over the parking, and I got to go to a traffic conference in 2007 down in Fort Lauderdale. That was my first real introduction to the sort of weird and wild domain investment community. Kind of got hooked. And so for 17 plus years now, I've been doing roughly the same thing. I'm not an engineer anymore. I kind of went through the ranks, product management to more on the business side. But this is still kind of what I consider to be home here in my slice of life in this career.
Yeah, I think we started around the same time. And I remember in my training class, we had 3 weeks of training, I think, at the time. And they had one slide in that 3 weeks that was for the auctions. And it said, this is the auctions. We need to tell you this here, but you're never going to have to worry about this. And the next slide. And I was
Little did you know.
Yeah, exactly. We've all been so involved in it. So when we started out, you said you started out with cash parking, and we had auctions. How did that evolve over time into the full-blown aftermarket that we have now?
As we started going, we found that more and more investors were coming in. They were using GoDaddy auctions as a way to build their portfolio, get some really good quality inventory. And then we started seeing that there were other areas that we could expand and other things we could do to help our investors be better. And one of those areas was on the network side. So we went across, and I got to know the folks at the two major competing networks were Afternic and Cedo at the time. And I got to know the folks at each of those really well. We approached Afternic for an acquisition. And really, that's what I would say is that's about, I don't remember, it's 10 plus years ago, maybe it's 11 years ago, in that range. But it was really the Kickstarter for, we're going to do more than just be a very insular GoDaddy aftermarket, whereas GoDaddy customers buying from other GoDaddy customers and acquiring GoDaddy names and keeping their names at GoDaddy, and instead really acquired Afternic so we could expand the broadness of how we play in the field. And what that got us was it got us a network that has significant reach across all the major registrars in the world, so that now our customers that were listing on GoDaddy, they would not only get the GoDaddy traffic, which prior to acquiring Afternic was actually a 30% commission. So we lowered our commissions to it when we got to Afternic. But you would expand to now customers could sell their names on other major registrars. And that also got us an experienced biz dev team, so we could grow the network as new registrars popped up. We would continue to grow the network. It got us experienced sales teams that were really specific to the domain aftermarket sales versus more the generalists that GoDaddy had prior. And you combine that with the best that GoDaddy actually had, which was our premier services, which Jody very well, was best in class for supports for domain investors on the domain registration and domain registrar side. So all of a sudden you roll all these things into one, and found ourselves in a spot where we had phenomenal support from premier services. We had the discount domain club that was offering competitive pricing, and now you've got this aftermarket network along with our parking that spread out and really got the reach that our customers needed. So from there, it's just been this snowball of adding more capabilities to the Afternic network, adding more partners to Afternic, adding more partners to our expiry and to our auctions as well, and just kind of keep on trying to do our best to keep up with new things that come out and keep up with the demand cycle and the supply cycle that we have.
The reach that Afternic has is incredible, and I know that the stats recently showed that there's 85 million searches per month for fast transfer network domains. So that's grown significantly as well. How does the acquisitions of Uni and Dan combine into Afternic?
The way I approached acquisitions and kind of, we certainly can build things that are interesting, but to be fast and to kind of move quickly is often, you want to look at what technology, what new things other people have out there, and then figure out if that's something that can be incorporated. For a year registry, I was really, I like the portfolio. So we got into the portfolio side. We call NameFind today, which is a great portfolio of domain names, over 1 million names that we use kind of to dog food our own products. We list on Afternic, we keep them on GoDaddy, so it helps us to figure out what it feels like to be a very large investor. So we like the portfolio Uni, but then what I really enjoyed about the Uni experience was the UX and just how easy they made it to do things, to do DNS changes and to anything along those lines. So what I had targeted for that acquisition was really that dev and UX team that was based out in the Caymans there, and we brought them in, and what they did was they built what is today the existing GoDaddy Domain Manager. And the Domain Manager prior to the Uni acquisition was not built at all for any bulk experiences, nothing that was really catered to somebody who had more than 5 domains even. And so the Uni experience came in, and for a while there, we had a domain investing experience. So customers that had over 50 plus domains would get one view on the Domain Manager, where they could modify their domain records and check on the dollar news, et cetera. And then we had a whole nother experience for customers that were more like SMBs, and they were smaller customers, not as many domains, that was more focused on that. And what we found was that when given the option, we did an A/B test on this, when given the option for the smaller customers to use the experience we had built for investors, they used it and stayed. They didn't opt back out. It was a 90+% of folks that did not opt back into the non-bulk experience. So I think that what the Uni team had come in and did it was they built a domain management experience that worked not just for investors, but for all of GoDaddy. So now we're 100%. The experience you have at GoDaddy, regardless of how big you are as a customer, was built off of this. So that was Uni. And each acquisition has its own technology and things that were really interesting for us. On Dan.com, one thing that I had long thought was that the initial high price of a quality domain name is often a limiter in a startup. Somebody coming in, somebody that they've got maybe a smallish marketing budget to start out with, but they know that they're going to try to grow their business and grow over time. They would like a good quality name. And that initial buy it now price was often a limiter. And we searched around a bit for ways of making it easier to pay over time. We did a few things with some of the pay over time, more credit type of companies. And that just really never felt right. It never quite worked. But what Dan had with their lease-to-own model was something that was really unique and interesting, and was something that I thought that we could add to our sellers that would give a great benefit to them, because it gives them more of a steady revenue stream rather than a very spiky revenue stream that most folks enjoy. And our buyers would be more likely to buy a name if they could set terms, 24-month term, 36-month term, whatever that may be. So that was the key piece of technology. And Dan had beautiful landers, and the way that they were able to create custom landers and do some of those things as well. Yeah, that was another key piece of what they had, that Afternic had, I think, one or two different lander types, but Dan's were better. So that's really was the key tech that we had acquired from Dan. And we got a great engineering team out in Amsterdam now, and kind of expand us globally on the side where we have enough Caymans and Afternic, or Caymans and Amsterdam, and then Boston for Afternic. So we were able to integrate that, and now we're going through the process of making sure that all the listings that were at Dan are moved over to Afternic, because we're close enough to parity to be able to start moving these things over and say, okay, now if you're at Afternic, boy, you've got the landers, you've got the lease-to-own, you've got all these options that we had at Dan, and now we're going to go through and do them forward. So that's really the reasoning behind those two acquisitions. We are trying to move them into this one unified vision. Engineering's hard, software takes time, but for us, the intention is not to say acquire a company just to keep it going as it was. So I want to acquire a company because it has some technology that benefits the rest of my customers, and I want them to all kind of be beneficial to each other.
And it's fair to say GoDaddy's built on the lease-to-own product itself, because we've got it on the search path, and we've got international currencies, multiple languages available now that Dan didn't have. So we've built on that technology, right?
Absolutely. It's acquire, bring it in, and make it better. That's a good point. I mean, even with Dan, the only way you could have a customer that was doing a lease-to-own was through their lander. And now you can go to GoDaddy.com and actually have anybody do a domain search for a name that's listed as LTO, and they'll be able to distinguish, or be able to see, here are the terms I want, and do a little slider and say, okay, this is how much it's going to be per month if I do a 48-month term versus a 12-month term. It's very slick to be able to have that on, obviously the largest registrar with the most demand in the world.
But what's striking to me is that when you came into GoDaddy, parking was probably the number one product. So that's generating consistent revenue for domain investors, and that's switched over the last couple of years to lease-to-own. So there's always some kind of stable income for domain investors available, and hopefully we've got the next generation of that in lease-to-own.
I hope so. I mean, the ideal is for all of our investors to be able to have those monthly payments come in and be able to really budget off of that and have stable, continual income through this training. So that would be fantastic if we get to that point.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see too, the focus that you've had in growing the other side of the coin, where you talked about making it easy for people to buy or lease-to-own as a small business, right? And integrating our own buyer brokers so that we could help small businesses come in and use our aftermarket to buy names where they might not know the process or know how much a name is worth. We tried to help them with the valuation tool so they know a name's not worth $10, it's worth more than that, right? So I think that really helps out from getting more buyers. It helps the small businesses, it helps out the domain investors. But we've also built a lot of internal tools, and we have a lot of resources to help investors. So what do you think are some of your favorites that we have to help the sellers to be able to manage and sell things?
On the sales side, I think that, yeah, certainly depends on where you are, where you fit. I think just a shameless plug, because this is a Domain Academy thing. I think if you're newish and even to sort of mid in your career of domain investing, the Domain Academy, good friend of ours, Michael Seiger, built this thing up based off of his years of being in the industry and really had something that was interesting. And speaking of acquisitions, that was another thing that we brought in because I wanted to make sure that GoDaddy customers and our investors, regardless how large they are, had a good baseline for here's quality educational materials on how to pick domain names, how to list and price your domain names. So yeah, Domain Academy, I think certainly is probably the penultimate, or the ultimate, rather, not penultimate, but the ultimate of our software there. I'm still a big fan of our valuation algorithm. I think it gets a lot of grief because by its nature, domain pricing and domain sales they're an emotional process for a buyer. And to try to quantify emotions is very difficult. And so the route that we took was a very machine learned based. Comparable sales will tell you the broad ranges of values. And I think that if used in the vein of these values are a guideline, these values are telling you what other names sold for that were similar. That's the best that you can do. Now, there are brokers that can extract more value by tapping into that emotional experience and get more value and get a higher price than what GoValue says. And I fully agree that, yeah, that's a thing. So the better you are at selling domain names, fantastic. And we obviously we have our own brokerage team, a very large brokerage team, both on the buy and the buyer side and the seller side, that are very well trained and very well experienced in extracting the best for who they're working for. So I think that GoValue as a tool, as a guideline, it is still one of the better things that we offer. And then beyond that, we've got GoDaddy's support company. We built ourselves off of great support. One of the key differentiators for us is that you can always call and get support regardless of what your issue is. And we do have a team that's built for the larger investors, Premier Services. They understand and they're able to not just deal with the day-to-day shifting of name servers and things of that nature, but really on the education side, they're very good at understanding where you as an investor are and what your goals are. And really they'll go through and they'll say, well, we have these names that are coming up for sale from this other person's Premier Services rep over here, in trying to make the matchmaker there. So big tools on the community for that really nobody else can match, in my opinion.
Yeah, Premier Services was almost like the hidden secret for GoDaddy in terms of domain investors. Before I joined GoDaddy, I wasn't really aware of Premier Services, and it's incredible the amount of knowledge that they have. So it's almost like we've got Domain Academy for the lower, people starting out, and then mid-tier, and then once you're accelerating, once you're growing as a domain investor, then Premier Services takes your hand and helps you grow. That seems like the way that things are run there.
Absolutely. I think it's got to be a bit of a larger investor to qualify for a Premier Services rep, because this is dedicated one-on-one support. So, but we are trying our best to make sure that we are making the return worth it. If you keep your business with us and you spend the money on the expiry or the domain renewals, and then we'll give you the best of the commissions on the sales side if you're keeping your business with us. And the best support we have as well to try to grow it all in. So that's really what we're trying to build here, is this one inclusive system that gets you every aspect of everything you'll need, which from the supply side, the demand side, expert auctions, premier services from the support, sometimes the brokers certainly are very in tune with their customers as well on the sales side.
I think that Premier Services just does so much more than most people know. They're definitely extremely cool. They also have a newsletter that comes out Monday to Friday that highlights different auctions that are for sale that they think are good. So that helps you to go through the auction inventory really easily. So, if you're interested in that, you can comment in the video. We'll be happy to get you in touch with somebody so you can sign up for that. But they offer a lot of benefits for the customers that they support. So it's been fun working with them over the years. So we talked about, what kind of things we are doing. What do you feel like is coming in the future? Can you share any, secrets behind the curtain of where we're going?
I mean, thinking of how we got to where we are, and just the broad vision of a unified platform for all aspects of domain investing, that's what we're going to continue to invest in and try to carry out as a vision for our customers. As new technologies, as new things pop up, we're going to try to see if there's an angle that will help our customers. And I think that right now, when machine learning and those things came through a few years back, we use those to get us to an evaluation algorithm. They're also, we work on the demand side quite a bit. So you look at what our ML teams have done for suggested domain names to all the millions of customers that are going through and looking for domain names. We've got a really impressive algorithm that says, okay, yeah, this is the exact match, available or not available, but then here's all the spins. Those spins are run through some really really impressive tech. And I think that now the entirety of GoDaddy is really leading into how can we improve that potentially with AI and some of the technology that we're seeing there. So you've got GoDaddy is investing quite a bit. You've probably seen some of the ads for GoDaddy Arrow, which is an AI-based, really it's a all-in-one, build your business, find your domain, get your marketing campaigns all set up, all this kind of within, just based off of prompts rather than based off of uploading of a bunch of data and images that would have taken days. And now all of a sudden within minutes, a customer can get themselves stood up. And a big part of that is prompt-based domain searching. And so I think that as that Arrow team sort of builds on that, we're going to start layering in the aftermarket names and making sure that we can start to really suggest those aftermarket names for that really kind of like business focused customer. So there's a little bit on there. Now I think there's some really interesting things that we can do with AI on the sales side as well. We get so many leads coming through every day, just from Afternic landers or GoDaddy make offer options, that we need help. And I think an AI assistance for our sales teams would be a great thing to start to lean into, to make sure that we're really working on the best quality leads and having our best reps really work on the ones that are most likely to lead to a sale, while not forgetting about the long tail that sometimes will pop a big sale in there. And with a limited number of humans, sometimes that long tail gets missed. But you throw AI, and all of a sudden you're mining the long tail, and you get some of those pop sales, and those can make somebody's year. So really focusing on making sure that we're doing the most we can with all the leads for our customers that are coming in is something that we're leaning into as well. And then just the natural progression of the growth of the internet, broadly speaking. You've got emerging markets coming up everywhere. And of course, India and China have been the big ones for a long time. South America has some great emerging markets as well. So I think that making sure that we're positioned not only sort of as a registrar, but also as an aftermarket that is partnering with local registrars and making sure that the demand from those, when somebody is doing a search on a registrar that's hyper local, they're still calling into Afternic to see if a domain name is available, so that we're building that network of our registrars to really expand for our customers the opportunity to get a hit, to get that one person wherever they are that really is the perfect fit for the domain name you're trying to sell. So those are the things we're really focused on.
And just going back to AI for a minute, do you see any opportunities with helping domain investors to purchase more domains in bulk? We talked about helping brick and mortar stores to purchase domains and get online using Aero, but what are the opportunities that we could help domain investors find more inventory?
Yeah, and I think that's really where a valuation algorithm, as I've already talked about, as a guideline, is got to be very interesting. So I can kind of get to the point where I can see us having some prompts of find me names that may sell for $2,000 or more in the e-commerce field or in this field, or a prompt that is find me domains that are available to register in XTLD that are in emerging markets, or that have we've seen keywords go up because we publish our keyword data that have had more keyword hits over the past X years. Things of that nature, I do absolutely think that there's some real opportunity there. We're not quite there just by the limitations of the domain searching and really pulling a list of something out of an infinite list of available domains. It's a really interesting engineering challenge, but it is an engineering challenge. So that is also one of those areas that I think on the acquisition side, we'll want to invest in and really try to figure out, like, how can we come up with lists of names that you can't promise that they're going to be good, but at least we can say, hey, here's a list of names that may have value to end users that you may want to pick up before somebody else does. I think that's something that's a realistic goal.
It's fascinating from the early days of TDNAM all the way through to thinking about, using prompts to find domain names for investment quality. Like, that's in a relatively short amount of time. That's such a big leap in technology, and just goes to show you how fast things are moving generally in technology. But there's always a domain name underneath. That's what I think. Always a domain name is a foundation.
With the growth of the internet, and domains are your digital identity, and digital identity is something that people talk about quite a bit, but it all starts with, one, the DNS system, which has been proven to be resilient and scalable through a growth curve that, when it was designed, nobody could have possibly anticipated. But DNS remains solid and stable as a foundation for domain names. And I think that's where we're all working off of this rock solid foundation. And then you continue on with the rock solid foundation of, the registrar model. Even ICANN, for as much grief as ICANN gets for a regulatory body over something that is so valuable and something that every business in the world, for the most part, uses, is the internet. It has remained exceptionally resilient, and the usefulness is just taken for granted, I think, of the broad internet, where if one thing goes down, if one AWS node goes down, and you get a whole smattering of news articles about it for weeks. So that's just how much we expect the internet to work, and it's all based off the DNS system.
So before we end, because we're coming to the end of our show, is there anything we left out that you'd give for advice for new investors who are starting out? Anything we forgot to ask, or something that you'd like to share that would help somebody who's new to the industry?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about what GoDaddy offers. We're part of this industry. Joe, James, and I have been in this for a very long time. It's not just the companies. It's the people that are helping each other out. Domain Academy is a great resource, of course. Was created by a domain investor until we took it over, and it's run by domain investors. But the community resources, the blogs, domain name wire, DN Journal, domain investing, these are people that are in the community that are doing their best to make sure that new investors understand what's going on, but make sure what's good and bad. And then you've got the forums. NamePros is a fantastic resource where you can get in touch direct to industry leaders as well as other domain investors of every size and scale right there. Rubbing elbows in person, another thing I would absolutely recommend. There's conferences. I'm really heartened by how many new conferences are popping up all the time. I think actually next week there's the one in Dubai, the Domain Days in Dubai. So at time of taping, by the way, and next week is there the one in Dubai, and that is interesting. You've got them. I've been to conferences in China, and we've had them in all across Europe, and it's everywhere globally. People are setting up meetings to get people together to talk about domain investing, share the best practices. And if you're new to this, learn, listen. Ears open, mouth shut is the way to go into these. And then I think that lastly, there are outfits out there. There's a nonprofit called the ICA. GoDaddy is a sponsor. I'm actually on the board of Internet Commerce Association, and the mission is to help domain registrants keep safe and promote their values for domain owners across the internet. And ICA does some fantastic things on making sure that policies like EDRP policies that are argued within ICANN as a governing body are fair to not just large companies and intellectual property owners that may try to be overly broad with trademarks, but fair to domain registrants. So we get a voice at the table. So I would absolutely recommend everybody look up the Internet Commerce Association and really try to get involved in that regard. Because again, it's a nonprofit that is working for domain registrants. So be involved and listen to people that have been doing it for a while. That's the big closing argument there.
And of course, the ICA has its conference next year. It's in Las Vegas in January, and I'm sure you'll be going, and you'll be heading to NamesCon more than likely. So if anyone ends up going there, then I won't speak on your behalf, Paul, but I think you're always open for a chat with domain investors.
I love it. I try to limit the meetings at conferences so I can be sort of near the booth as much as humanly possible. That's really my goal. Like NamesCon is the biggest of the domain conferences, and I do my best to stay at the booth as much as I can, just so I can have a chance to talk to folks that are coming in and either new or want advice or just want to say hi. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, it's been absolutely fascinating having you on. Really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add just before we close?
No, I think that love what you guys are doing with Academy, and I know that there are other podcast episodes that are probably far more interesting people that have come before. So appreciate you guys having me on as sort of the kicker of this whole thing. But this has been fun. Again, 17 years in this field. I think we've built some really interesting things, met some really interesting people. So this is just been beautiful.
Thanks a lot for coming along, and thanks for watching us. And don't forget to like and subscribe.